Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We are talking about what you do after you have passed the CMMC audit. So why this conversation, right? Why now? And I think that really anyone who's in this chat or anyone who is watching this live stream, you already know between 2025 and 2026, we have officially entered into the enforcement reality stage of CMMC. So this is no longer about theoretical compliance. This is CMMC flowing through contracts and subcontractor chains. Prime contractors are now really tightening up their flow down requirements. And we are officially starting to see sustainment failures showing up in reassessments. So I think now the industry is poised to really move from how do we pass mindset into how do we stay compliant without breaking the business. So today is not about getting you through the CMMC audit. So if that's why you're here, I'm sorry. But we are going to be talking today about what happens the day after. My name is Debi Easterday. I'm the CEO of a woman-owned small business called H2B Consulting. And H2B is a talent solutions partner. We offer direct placement services, fractional and contract talent, as well as recruitment process outsourcing and project-based services. And today, the star of the show is the director of our CMMC and cybersecurity project team, Wilson Bautista. And Wilson joins us from Jun Cyber. Jun Cyber really specializes in technical CMMC implementation and control level expertise, while H2B specializes in building the operational model and the documentation that allows that technical work to survive in the organization long term. And that's the combination that organizations really need to achieve CMMC success. It's all about operationalization. So Wilson is the founder and CEO of Jun Cyber, which is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business that really specializes in navigating complex regulatory frameworks like CMMC and NIST and ISO and SOC 2. And they do so by offering really a combination of hands-on consulting and automated tooling and essentially compliance as a service solutions. So why should we listen to Wilson? Not only because he's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, thank you for your service, and also that he is one of maybe 300 or so CMMC certified lead assessors in the entire world. He has successfully led hands-on CMMC readiness and remediation efforts for some really complex multi-entity global environments where the control ownership spanned really across business units and subcontractors and enterprise GRC. And today we are speaking with Wilson about what happens after you pass the audit. So welcome, Wilson. And you know this, your credentials are vast and your resume is so impressive. So if there's anything I missed in that intro that you would like to speak of about, by all means, the floor is yours.
No, I appreciate the kind introduction. Thank you, Debbie, for having me on. I'm really excited to be here to talk about this because this is a topic that not many people talk about.
Yeah.
Especially because when you are in the thick of it, specifically, like you've already got your gap assessment done, you're working through your POAMs. It's like, hey, I've got these milestones I have to meet. I'm going to meet them. We have this assessment that's coming up. We're going to be ready for the assessment. and then we run up to the finish line, we cross the finish line, but it's not over.
And then we walk.
It's
All
not
right,
over.
box check. Now we can get on with our lives, right?
Right.
And I think that that's the whole reason we're having this conversation, Wilson, is
It
because,
is.
you're having those intimate conversations with C-suite leadership and their approach to CMMC compliance. And I think that where we see organizations succeed is when they move into that operationalization and they stop looking at it as if it's a project that they need to deliver,
Right.
with an end date. And then the project's complete, and now we move on to the next project. And really, I feel like that's what we've been talking about. That seems to be the core problem.
Yeah, it's one of the core problems. And like for any of us that have been in project management, we know that projects have a definitive start date and a definitive end date, right? And everything that's in between are those milestones that you have to meet. But what we fail to do, and what a lot of people are finding out, is that when we treat it like a project, we treat it that it's temporary, right? And then once you get your audit, that checklist is done. Now you're moving on to the next thing. All of those controls, all of the controls and objectives that you've put in place, all the tools, the personnel, well, you need to manage that, because it's not only important to make sure that you have the capability, but you're maintaining that capability to continue to show compliance. It's not, let's hit all these boxes, check it, and then let's not, think about it until 12 months, 6 months before the audit. And what you're going to have is inconsistency in controls, and you make yourself liable, right? Because you're telling the government, yes, within the next 3 years, I'm going to make sure that I'm compliant to what we have set, that you have checked, assessed. We're going to make sure that we maintain that over the next 3 years until we have to be reassessed again. So that is a big thing that people fail to realize.
It shouldn't take lightly, right?
It is a commitment. And I know that a lot of organizations say, yeah, no, we understand that. But yes, it is a lift. It's still a lift. So if we're not considering not just the resources to get you to compliance, it's also considering after, right? After the game, right? You want to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You can't just like win one game and say, hey, yeah, we're good. It's like you have to consistently
stop training.
Yeah.
Well, and we were laughing about this is like when you're back in high school and you cram for the test, and you memorize everything you need to know for the test, and then you take the test and then you forget it all.
Right.
And that's how a lot of organizations are. They just want to get the audit, they just want to get through the audit. And then once they get through the audit, they feel like, okay, we're successful now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What they're missing out on is actually like the kid in high school who's cramming. You're missing out on learning the material. You're missing out on really understanding how our business processes have to change and how we need to assign controls and accountability, and we need to provide training and documentation so that everyone knows not only what they need to do to get through that audit, but what they need to do after, and how they need to maintain that environment and that compliance with their teams and with their processes, and understanding that if there are changes in their environment, there are likely impacts to the SSPs that we have in place and to the POAM documentation that we have in place. So understanding the necessity of that communication chain to be not only something that gets us through audit, but something that is living documentation that is monitored and updated as and when our business processes and partners change. Right. It's about maintaining what you've already created. And I feel like that's the conversation. That's why we're having. It's the friendly reminder everyone seems to need right now.
I think, and just to add on, it's like when we think about CMMC, we have to think about why it exists, right? The cybersecurity model certificate maturity model certification exists so we could have a level set baseline of security controls for our defense industrial base, for all of the defense suppliers, right? Because before it just wasn't in existence. Now they did put something in place saying that, you have to follow these controls and you have to self-attest to say that, yes, you are following these controls, but now they're looking. And a common misconception with a lot of organizations is that when they hear cyber, they automatically think, oh, this is IT.
Right.
This is just an IT thing, right? But no, it's not. If you look at some of the controls, you have cross-functional controls that all impact, how you handle the specific information, right? So looking at first looking at the CMMC that it's a technical problem or the technical solution, that is not the case. So going back to how do we make sure that we sustain compliance after the assessment? Well, you have to look up all of the workups to get compliant as a culture shift, a culture change, right? Because it's not just going to be, hey, we need to make sure that we have vulnerability scans going on. It's all right, whenever we give somebody access to controlled unclassified information, we need to make sure that that background check is done and they have a need to know, right? And then if we do have somebody that comes in the facility that has has access to CUI, the facility has access to CUI, and it's around that this person is escorted. So those practices need to be taught. They need to be maintained throughout the build-up process. But then afterwards, it's like, okay, yes, we are continuing these processes afterwards, and we're making sure that these are done. So getting not just HR, your communications/media team, your IT operations, your cybersecurity team, all of those folks in line, you have to also get the people that are contacting CUI or working with CUI all the time. So if you have engineers and people that are touching it, you need to also train them, right? And then when you look at the CMMC program in itself, it's like you also have to look at holistically. Somebody from the business should understand the implications of if you handle CUI incorrectly, what are the ramifications for the company? You lose that potential revenue source. So when you look at CMMC and the implementation from a holistic standpoint, you start noticing is like, okay, well, we need to change our process. We need to change our policies, not just from an IT perspective, but holistically from an organizational perspective, because everybody has to follow the same procedures when it comes to handling CUI. Any drift, that is a gap. And that's not something that we want to see, but it's something that we are now experiencing with folks that are getting assessed and saying, oh, wow, this is a heavy lift. We need to make sure that the control frequencies of us reviewing these controls are being done, and that we know by gathering our own evidence that we can safely attest to anybody who asks this, yes, we are still compliant, even though we're a year and a half after our assessment. So those are things that
they know they are, because they understand what they need to do in their specific, unique environment to maintain that compliance. And I think that's one of the reasons that our programs have been really successful, is because we don't just focus on handing over the framework and, okay, here's your checklist.
Yeah.
We're working in these organizations and providing training and documentation so that when we leave, everybody knows what they need to do to maintain, and it's not just getting you through that audit and getting you through that readiness. And this is why we've been called back to own sustainment services for organizations, because they understand that when we get them ready for the audit, we understand what working with their control owners looks like. And we know what we need to hand off to ensure that that work is done, whether someone is babysitting the process or not. And the problem is, the process erosion and, the issues become post-audit, that people aren't looking over your shoulder now, making sure that you're doing it. They're anticipating that, well, you know what you need to do to maintain compliance, and they're presuming you do. What if you're not doing it? We don't want to find that out, as many are during the reassessment, when we realize that, oh, these balls that we were juggling really, really well during the audit, everyone dropped after we passed.
Yeah. And then part of the issue too is that you have changes of personnel.
Absolutely.
Right. If you have, and I post this a lot on my LinkedIn, is that if you have one person running your compliance program, it's like if they leave and everything falls apart, it's like you don't have a program, you have a risk.
It's a major risk now.
A major risk, right? So it's not one person's responsible for compliance. It's like everybody's responsible for compliance. And I am also not saying like this is going to be like a kumbaya, everybody's holding hands, we're going to get it done together. No,
we know better than that.
Yeah, it's a top-down policy. Make sure, hey, this is what needs to be done. This is how we're going to do it, and this is when we're going to check. And we want to maintain a certain level of compliance within our organization, and make sure that we do not lower the bar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, we have seen quite a lot, in varied client environments with regard to CMMC in terms of readiness. But sometimes even the most prepared companies are missing out on some critical issues. What are some of the things that you have seen? Like what did leaders not see coming in 2025 that you saw over and over again in the field?
So as far as when the assessment was over, they weren't expecting some of the costs that were going to come with that. So it was like, okay, we've spent thousands, maybe multiple millions of dollars to get to where we are today. But we did not anticipate that it was going to be such a load on our team. And what happens a lot is that you have all of these control owners that are responsible for these controls, but that's not their main job, right? Compliance is not their main job. Let's say you have an engineer, you have them attesting to a control. It's like I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
Right. And then you take that engineer's, time, those hours that they're working, and put them in a compliance role. Those are hours that are not making a product. Absolutely. Right. So it's those kind of costs after the fact that they don't take account for. And it's like, this is impacting our bottom line. This is impacting our revenue generation. This is impacting our production of products that we need to sell. So it's being able to quantify that and then say, okay, is this a compliance activity that we can offboard, or is this something that's truly somebody needs to do? So it's, getting a cumulative expense of all of the work that needs to be done. That's scaring a lot of people when they find out the next day. It's like, okay, we had all the support to help us get us here, but now it's on us, and we have this big bear that we're trying to wrestle on a daily basis, and this is hard, right? And so it's like we either get stronger and wrestle the bear and work together because what needs to be done, or we get some help. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing now.
Well, and I think that is actually what has transitioned several of our readiness contracts into Readiness Now Plus Sustainment, because they didn't anticipate that heavy lift after the audit. And everybody remembered very quickly how strapped they were for time trying to get their audit readiness homework done on top of the 40 to 60 hours of work that they've got already on their plate every week. So it is important to have someone who's the ringmaster, who's going from each functional area of the organization, and ensuring that that is consistently being monitored and documenting any sort of changes, and ensuring that our team gets new documentation in place if there are changes that are going to impact the SSPs that we've got on file. So it's an ongoing process that I think you're right. People don't anticipate it being. They think they're going to get through that audit and get that certification and go back to business as usual. And that's very rarely the case. And in fact, many realize quickly they can't go back to business as usual because that's not compliant.
Correct. That's correct.
So it is about changing how you're doing business as well. I think the other thing that came up was, in many cases, people not realizing the impact on subcontractors and vendor relationships that they had as well. That was something that you and I spoke about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, because you're very internally focused, right?
Yes.
It's like you're like, I have to get this stuff done. I have to get this stuff done. But if you look at the rules, like if you're providing CUI to your subcons, they need to be compliant as well. And if they're not compliant and they find out, guess who gets in trouble?
That's right.
We do. Right. So that is another consideration that people are like, okay, well, do we hand out CUI to our subcontractors? If we do, how are we ensuring that they're compliant?
Exactly.
Right. Wait, do I have time to do this? I have 100 vendors. I
was just going to say, and then even like looking at your inventory of who are all my subcontractors, because some organizations don't run through a centralized procurement team where they have insights to exactly every vendor or subcontracting partner that might have access. So it really, it's you almost have to put on your private eye hat within the organization to figure out what are our checks and balances here? Where do we start?
Yeah, so I mean, that's why it's important to have a partner that understands what the requirements are, right? To understand what the requirements are and how that impacts your potential vendors that may be liable to be under the rules that for CMMC requirements. So it's not only knowing that, but then when you do identify those folks, it's like, all right, what resources are you going to provide for them to be compliant? Because now if they are like a single source of material that you need to provide, or they need to provide to you to build your product, well, if they go away because they can't be compliant, then what are you going to do? Yeah. So it's like those business.
Now the onus is on you to ensure that that subcontractor is compliant.
Yeah. So it's really like a business problem, right? And we go back to like, okay, holistically, internally, we look from an organizational standpoint. Yes, we have to make sure that this is done. But now you put your CEO cap on, and then you have your CISO cap on, and your chief compliance officer cap on. You're saying, okay, from a business perspective, we know that these 5 are our main suppliers, and they need to be compliant with CMMC level 2. All right, I'd be asking them, what have you done to get there? Did you know? Or I mean, you should have known because we passed that information, right? That too.
You were hoping it wouldn't.
Like where are your statuses? Yeah. In that, and it's like, and then if they don't know, or they don't know where to start, it's just like being able to give them resources. Now, a lot of the clients that I deal with, they are working with the large primes, right? And the large primes they've been asking for years. All right, you need to be compliant with NIST 800-171, or now it's like, okay, you don't handle CUI, but we need you to be ready to handle CUI. So you need to be CMMC level 2, ready to go and get assessed. And what we've seen is that if contractors did not talk to their primes about what they've been doing, those suppliers were completely left out of any kind of decision making for defense clients or for defense products that they were creating. So even if they had a plan and they were moving towards it, that bode well for them,
Yeah.
rather than if they didn't do anything at all. So you can look at it from like, I need to be responsible for my suppliers, and then you can look at it from the standpoint. The other standpoint is that the primes are not even considering you if you are not even moving in that direction. And I'm pretty sure that it is going to be a competitive differentiator for a lot of companies to say, yes, we are CMMC level 2 attested to, right? And we've been doing this for X amount of years already. Those suppliers are going to be the top picks,
Yeah.
vice the ones that say, yeah, we're ready to go. We could be attested whenever we want, right? Or we can be assessed whenever we want. So it's again a business decision. Like where do you want to go? So from
It
CEO,
is a business, and it's a business investment, right? So do you want to be intentional about pursuing this, or are you doing it out of, necessity because you're obligated to? And I feel like, that was one of the things that we spoke about, is using your CMMC compliance as a competitive differentiator. I mean, you're going through the bother. Why not promote this? Why not, sell your services to other organizations where that would be an appeal? Once you've gone through this process, I would say that it would definitely be something that would put you at the top of the list if someone is working in a heavily regulated environment, whether they're CMMC mandated or not. It shows that you've got a respect for and an understanding of how to navigate around rigid compliance frameworks.
Right.
So talk to me, Wilson, about where you're seeing things kind of break for some of the clients that we've worked with. Like, where are things breaking in between the audits?
So I would say that a lot of what I'm seeing break between the audits it's the continuous monitoring, right? Making sure that people are actually looking at how the controls are implemented today and to ensure that they're baseline, right? So it's the frequency of those control reviews to make sure that they're actually reviewing on the controls on time. And then it's making sure that they improve, right? But it's a struggle for a lot of folks to ensure that, okay, we review the control and then not take the attestation from last year, right? Say, hey, we've reviewed this control and it's all good, and then copy that and then put it on for the next year, right? So we see this is where compliance breaks. It's like, yeah, we've met the requirement here. We're going to check the box, right? Because it has been looked at by the assessor, and then it's like, okay, well, that passed last year. We're just going to use the same thing.
So everything's fine. Yeah, we passed last year.
Everything's fine. We're good. We're not going to be checked for another 3 years. So that's where compliance breaks. So it's having that discipline to really check, and that discipline takes time, right? It takes time and commitment to make sure that, yes, we did a sample of 100 servers of our set of 100 servers. We did a 10% sample, and all of them are still good.
Yeah.
Right. It's taking that extra time rather than saying, okay, well, nothing's really changed since last year. Let's go ahead and copy the same narrative and just put it into my tool and just say that we're still good. That's where stuff breaks.
I was going to say, and that's unfortunately how a lot of people are attacking it, and that's the problem. You mentioned control drift earlier, and I thought about, okay, I mean, this is something as simple as a quick patching job or an undocumented change, in one system. And all of a sudden, well, I didn't think I needed to check in with the CMMC SSPs on this. It was just a small change. Well, that can be a breach in your compliance. I mean, but it's something so little that, well, we just needed to do this quick patch, but it's getting into that mindset that when I patch, I need to look at, I need to make sure that change is communicated to the control owner.
Right.
So it's a matter of getting into the habit of knowing that if I'm in charge of a network change, that I now know I'm not just in charge of this and I need to make sure I tell this person. I also now need to make sure that I
Yeah.
have the CMMC control change leader aware of this change. It's about getting into that mindset, and you get into a mindset when it becomes a habit.
Right.
And it becomes a habit when it becomes something that you are thinking of and working in and working toward on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that goes, yeah, it goes back to, the culture, and your like change management is a perfect example,
Yes.
by the way. Perfect example, because you have a lot of small businesses like that have never had like an IT department.
Right.
And now because they do government contracting, they have to have an IT formalization policies and procedures. They have to have cybersecurity policies and procedures. Something whereas like as a team of 5 people, you're like, well, I used to just give permissions to whoever, and I never had an issue with that because
We all
that's
trust
just,
each other here.
we
Yeah.
all talk to each other and stuff just gets done.
Yeah.
Right? And awesome. It's great that things get done fast, but the reason why we want to show compliance is to show that we have control,
That's right.
right? And we cannot replace, you cannot substitute operational speed for compliance, risking to be uncompliant, not compliant. So when we see a lot of people doing that before, it is a struggle to change the mindset. And that's why I kind of go back to, you got to get the culture shift. And we have it with a lot of startups and small businesses that they are used to moving fast. They're like, why do I need to put in a ticket to get a user? Why do I need to put in a ticket to deprovision a user? Why do I need to put in another ticket, for this, like a firewall change? I could walk over there and do it myself.
Yeah.
Because when you change a system, when you add a user, they have to go through the process that you said that you were going to do, right? So when the assessor comes in 3 years and looks at the 3-year window, you're like, all right, tell me about, Debbie, this user. Let me see their approval and who approved it. All right. Who allowed his permissions? Why does she have this role? Why is she in this group? And we should have that documentation.
Yeah.
But, this is where things break. People say, oh yeah, she was new, and, we just added her because it was, we didn't follow.
Yeah. I don't know.
This is
She's
like,
part of the team.
yeah, she just joined the team. We just kind of, added her.
Yeah.
That's where stuff breaks. And guess who's not compliant?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, and the other thing too here, and I also want to say, is like the Department of War, they could say, we want to spot check X amount of our manufacturers or X amount of our suppliers. And it's not that you're going to wait between the 1 and the 3-year window that you're like, oh, I'll be good. It's like, no, this is stuff that you need to do now and consistently do, because there are the chances of being audited, a spot audit, a spot check. So that's why you continue to do this. And this is where we see, people with the mindset that said, hey, I want to have this checkbox mentality and not change the way that we currently think just because I just want to pass this audit and get it over with. I won't be checked in 3 years. It's like, no, you might be, right?
We'll start looking at it again in another 2.5 years or so.
Yeah, but it's being a good steward, right? And also making sure that we're protecting this kind of information from getting into enemy hands.
I think it's very, very kind of you to offer that friendly reminder about spot checks, because I think a lot of people forget that that's a possibility, and we'll tackle this again in 2.5 years, get ourselves ready for the next one. That's not a viable mindset. So
yeah. And I'll raise another flag here, because those spot checks, I mean, we've already seen like false claims acts with some universities that have said that they were compliant, and guess what? They weren't when they were checked. and they were fined a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
I was going to say those are doors closing fines too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For a small business, that
yeah,
is huge.
yeah,
Right. And that's something that you can't risk, especially if this is your main source of revenue for your company.
agreed. So let's talk about that then. You kind of touched on, bringing this into your operating model. So, what does it actually mean to treat compliance as an operating model?
Right. So I always look at everything as, when we build something up, we want to give you capability.
Mhm.
Right. If you're building up and you're just going to leave it in place and think that it's just going to run on its own, it's just going to work, it's like, no, that's not going to happen. You
Yeah,
have to have sustainable people to support your system, because compliance is not just a checklist, like we've been saying.
yeah,
It is a system of several processes that are working together to ensure you're doing the one thing, which is protect, control unclassified information, right? So how do you do that? You have to make that operational. You have to have the people, processes, and tools
mhm,
in place to sustain the processes, to ensure that the control objectives are being met. So what does that mean? You're properly resourced with your people, you're properly resourced with the technology, you're properly resourced with the tools, and even the knowledge and the expertise. So you need to make sure that you have that in place. If you're lacking any one of those things, then you have to fill those gaps. And where do you fill those gaps? That's the question. It's like, do you have a managed service come in? Do you hire more hands? Do you hire contracted hands? It just depends.
yeah. Well, and I think too that operationalization is, again, we talked about it in the beginning of the webinar, but it really is about training too. Ensuring that your teams are adequately trained, and that they understand the why, and that they understand the impact of, okay, well, look, at this isn't we get a little ticket and a write up and a, slap on the hand if we're non-compliant. Really letting them know what them dropping the ball, how that can impact our organization. I think that it's important, and that's something that we instill in our control leaders when we're offering training to them. We really walk them through, not, okay, well, I know you're sick of all the NIST and ISO and all of the different compliance measures you have to work, but this is the space that we work in.
It is.
And if you are a prime, you want to maintain that business. It is a
Right.
critical part of your revenue stream. So let's talk about that, because I think the ROI around compliance and sustainment is really a conversation that we've been having with our clients very frequently. Why do I want it out there? All this is a cost center. All this does is cost me money. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we had talked a little bit. Well, I mentioned one of our clients is dealing with a prime contractor, right? And I mentioned that if they weren't going towards CMMC level 2, this is like several years ago, um, they weren't going to be considered for any kind of future
Mhm.
work, right? And so how that impacted them was a very positive way, is that they said, yes, we know that we can do CMMC level 2 now, even though we don't really need it because we don't have CY, but we can get the assessment now. So what happened was, is that those that did not want to invest in getting the controls in place, well, now they were not going to be in consideration. Like I said, well, those opportunities that went to them now went to my client.
Yeah.
So the investment that they put into us, tripled,
Yeah.
right? So they based off of their revenue. So let's just say, they put in $50,000 to be compliant a year, right? They made 3 times that for the year, right? So it's just like, okay, well, that is a good ROI. for me.
Well, and it is, and this is a defense sector reality. I mean, if you want to continue in this space, this isn't going to be a matter of should I. You will
Right.
have to. So yeah, so it does matter. And look at, you've already invested this much, in getting that CMMC audit checkbox. So why not continue to invest in, to support that initial investment, and ensure that in 3 years there isn't going to be any upset in your business continuity because all of a sudden we've realized, oh, we're no longer compliant. You don't want to find that out when you're being reassessed.
Right.
So
Right.
puts your revenue stream greatly at risk. So yeah, so I know that's one of the questions everyone in the C-suite wants to know, right? Why should I invest in it? Well, if you want to stay in this space, stay working in the government space, yeah, you just have to. They get to tell us. They get to tell us how we're going to operate.
Yes,
And
exactly.
if we want to walk away from the business, that's our choice. I don't recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine it's a business most folks want to keep. So I know we are right about at time. We're going to be opening up questions for anyone who has been wondering. I do know that we've got a few questions, if you don't mind, Wilson, that I'm going to start with from people who I know could not make it to the live session today, but who have questions for you. So the first one, what is the biggest mistake companies make after passing their audit?
Okay. Well, the biggest mistake is not following up on your control and your controls by not doing your continuous monitoring. Right. That is the biggest mistake. And I get it. It happens because operations happen.
Yes.
It happens.
People involved and
yeah, I mean, people leave, things get out of the way, but you need to have not just like everybody that is a control owner, just be a control owner for the control owner's sake, but you need to have somebody orchestrating this to make sure that it is happening when it needs to happen, and that you have a single person that could coordinate between people and make sure that the controls are being reviewed, attested to, and looked at in the way that they're supposed to. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that we see, is that you just don't have that continuous monitoring, even though you're supposed to have it happen on a regular basis.
Yeah. What is the first thing that leaders should check post-audit?
So I would say one of the first things that I would check post-audit is to look at your GRC tool and understand who the control owners are, right? And then go back to that continuous monitoring and have a plan in place based off of the frequency of controls to make sure that the controls are being reviewed on time. Now, of course, you would want that plan beforehand, but any kind of adjustments that you would make after the audit based on the results and some of the feedback you get, that may dictate, what decisions you make in ensuring that your compliance program is running smoothly.
I will tell you, we didn't have any questions on LinkedIn, but we do have a lovely comment that I wanted to share. Just someone in the chat said, this is super helpful. Working at a service provider company that has direct engagements with prime contractors. This has been enlightening. So thank you for that lovely comment. I appreciate that. And look, if there are questions that pop up in your mind as you're sitting there digesting what we've been discussing today, Wilson and I are both 100% open to continuing the conversation offline. You can feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. I know I live there, and Wilson does frequently check in as well. But we are we are always open to having initial conversations if you think there is an opportunity for you to really further sustainment efforts in your organization. We can show you what that looks like. Because there isn't one clear-cut definition of what it looks like, because everything in CMMC is really customized to the individual environments, at least if it's done right. That's how we do it. But it is about really going in and learning the nuances of your business, your subcontractors and partnership relationships, like we were discussing earlier, and really just looking at any opportunity that there may be a gap in compliance. Sometimes you're too close to see the view. But a fresh set of eyes coming in can see where there's some gaps or some additional alignment necessary.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would leave our audience with today, Wilson, that you can think of in terms of post-audit insight?
Yeah, I know that we've been talking as like an internal team has been taking over controls, but the comment that Aaron posted on here talking about service provider company that has direct engagements with prime contractors, right? If you're a service provider providing support for CMMC for your clients, and we'll just talk about post audit, right? If you are handling CUI or you're providing security protection services for your client, understand that as the client, from my perspective, if you're providing me services, I'm going to still need to ask you, are you still doing these things for me? Right. And that service provider should know that they need to provide that to them. So it's not that just the company is responsible for being compliant, but the service providers providing those services, they need to understand those requirements and what's being asked of them and the reason why. So as a CEO of that organization that has been recently assessed, I would ensure that any kind of contract renegotiations would have specific requirements for service providers to provide the necessary evidence to ensure that compliance is maintained, right?
And showing that it is a contractual obligation. We are expecting that you're going to, year over year, as we're renewing your contract, that you're going to be continuing these efforts that keep our contracts in place. That's what partnership looks like.
Right.
If your vendors or your subs don't want to bother with it, you need to find new vendors and new subs to work with, because it will impact ultimately your compliance.
Right.
It's not on them. It's now on you, because if you're knowingly doing business with that sub that you know is non-compliant, you're non-compliant.
Yeah. And then from a service provider standpoint, as a CEO of a company and you're looking to change, your vendor that's providing those critical services for CMMC compliance, I would ensure that you make sure you find a vendor that understands and can speak the language of CMMC. Right. I know it's probably like, oh yeah, of course. But it's just like an IT provider is not the same across the board. Right. Like if you have one that specifically deals with compliance, right? That's somebody I know.
Yeah.
I know that
benefit though. It's the benefit of aligning with that partner, like you said, that speaks the language. I already know and am investing in CMMC. This isn't going to be something I roll my eyes about when you come knocking on my door every year. Are you still compliant? Of course I am. Of course I am. It's now not even a matter of am I or aren't I. It's embedded in my business processes,
right.
business model. Compliance is now my business processes are remodeled based on my compliance requirements.
Yep. Find a partner that's going to go on that journey with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all your brain power and lessons learned and what we have seen out there in the last year or two around CMMC. I think it's been very eye-opening. And I think it's so varied the way that organizations approach CMMC. I mean, some are jumping in feet first with enthusiasm and others are acting like they're dragging a 500-pound gorilla behind them. But it's no matter how do you get there, get over the line, right? And then once you're over the line, guess what? The race isn't over.
Yep, we're still going. We're still going.
Well, awesome. I hope that this has been informative for some of our listeners and viewers. And Wilson, thank you so much for sharing your insights. You do a fantastic job. I know that nobody does CMMC better. I know I'm biased, but
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm also critical. You know that about me.
I do.
But yeah, I feel very proud of the work we're doing in this space, not only getting people over through the audit, but really what we're doing to just kind of change organizations and the way that they're doing business. It doesn't always have to be bad news, everybody.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. And again, feel free to reach out to Wilson or I if you have questions about your CMMC program or path. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your week.